Welcome back to the Chase MedSearch podcast. My two distinguished guests today are Greg Peel and Dave Harris. Gregory L. Peel started as a U.S. Army counterintelligence officer before pivoting to medical device sales, where he broke records, built global training programs, and championed diversity. Today, he leads Eclipse Solutions, a minority veteran-owned firm helping medical innovators succeed. Gregory holds dual master's degrees from Johns Hopkins and just released The Pivot Point, Breaking into Medical Device Sales. He's here to share his journey, the lessons that shaped his career, and how anyone can make their own pivot. Dave Harris is a graduate of West Point, served a total of 12 years as an artillery officer, transitioned into corporate America via medical device operations, sales and marketing with J&J Ethicon and Medtronic, serving in various senior sales and marketing leadership roles. Following 29 years in MedTech, Dino then tested his entrepreneurial skills, opening his small business in logistics with a third-party agreement with Amazon as a delivery service partner, the last mile model. He is now recently retired and seeking to fulfill the next chapter in his career. Welcome to the Chase MedSearch podcast, guys.
Hey, thank you, Jordan, for having us on board. Pleasure to be a part of it and talk about this exciting project.
Jordan, thank you as well.
Great to have you guys on. Dave, hold up the book for us here real quick.
You got it. Here we
All
go, right here.
This is the book, The Pivot Point. And Greg Peel has written a book. This is an incredibly valuable, honest, uncompromising book that talks about the road to success and the ups and downs that accompany it. I love stories. And in his book, Greg tells the stories of 16 African-American trailblazers in medical sales, as well as his own story. This book shares many of the secrets of their success, unconventional thinking, and at times their failures. It's unlike any business book I've read this year because it tells the human element that is so often left out in today's business authorship. Greg, why did you write this book?
Interesting question, because this has been a project that's been 5 years in the making. But the last 3 years, it's what really catapulted me to get this book going. And it starts with the story. You said you like stories. Well, Joe Press and I, who was mentioned in the book, we were attending a National Sales Network conference in DC in 2002. Room was filled with about maybe 125 individuals, and Joe and I were the guest speakers. So we walk in the room and you hear folks saying, "Oh my God, that's Joe Press, that's Greg Peel. They're iconic figures in this business." Ego was buffed up walking in. Then all of a sudden I saw a young lady say, who are they? And I realized at that moment that our history is being lost. And it was being lost because no one was capturing that history. So that was the first reason. The second reason was when I was actually doing the interviews, I sat down and I actually interviewed each individual. I videoed everybody, and I was interviewing Big Dave, Dave's father. We interviewed in November, and then unfortunately, Dad passed away in February, March. Yeah, that year, that next year, and that's what really catapulted me to get serious about this project. I mean, we're losing iconic figures that established excellence in history in the DMV, and they were passing away. And I just wanted to honor them and honor all of us who were the pioneers who got this career started.
Yeah, you've definitely done that in a really unique way that really captivated me when I read it. Who's the audience mainly for your book, would you say?
Well, I wrote the book to capture a couple of folks. You mentioned in our bio that both Dino and I are junior military officers, and we pivoted from the military into corporate America. And my story, it's thoroughly outlined in the book, but there was a lot of unknowns. And I really wanted more junior military officers to have access to the information. Not only that, but to understand what 20 or 30 years could look like post their military career. Number two, are students who might be interested in a career in medical sales. I have a funny story I have to share with you. I was at Penn State this past weekend, And we're at the bar, and a dad is there with his daughter and his wife. And he says, my daughter's a senior. She's about to graduate. And I said, well, what does she want to get her degree in? He says, she wants to get her degree in medical sales. I said, are you kidding me? In my 30 years, come on, Jordan, you've never heard anybody in college say they want to get a degree in medical sales. So I brought the young lady over, and she said, yeah, my degree's in marketing, but I've been wanting to figure out how to get into this space. And I said, well, Merry Christmas. You met the right person. So I told her to get the book. I'll coach her. And ironically, since we've launched this book 4 months ago, I personally have been assisting over 25 people in figuring out how to navigate either pharmaceutical, medical device sales, or the biotech market utilizing the book. And then I think that lastly, I really wanted the book to be known because when we started, you've been in the business 25 years, Dino and I 25, 30 years, African Americans represented less than 1% representation in medical device sales. Fast forward 2025, including pharmaceutical, we're about 3.8%. All right, some would say the needle has moved, but it really hasn't moved that much. And I attribute that to a couple of things. And I mentioned it in the book. We got cronyism and nepotism. Can't battle that. But lack of awareness, we can. And that's why I really appreciate you allowing us being on your show to help spread the awareness. And my last story before I end all of who the audience is for, I participated in several speaking engagements, one of which was to our Kappa League in Baltimore. They had 75 young high school kids. And I asked a question. I said, all right, anybody in here know anybody in their family or circle of friends that is in pharmaceutical sales? One person raised their hand. I said, what about medical device or biotech? 0 raised their hand. And I was losing the kids' attention. I said, okay, what about cybersecurity? Everybody raised their hand for cybersecurity. What about gaming? Everybody raised their hand. And I realized at that moment, this business is still unknown to so many people 30 years later. So that's who the book is kind of catered to.
Dave, you want to chime in on just the unknown of aspect of medical device sales? Because that resonates so powerfully with me whenever I talk to people about, I'm a recruiter and they think I'm a military recruiter. I say, no, I recruit in medical device sales, and just the blank look on the face, just happens every time. Dave?
No, I agree. I think for many years it's been conflated with pharmaceutical sales, and it's all up in one category, and there's 2 different processes involved in that. I think to Greg's point, it's about just a whole point of awareness in speaking to it. And I think he has a big charge and a passion to get this introduced at the universities and colleges so that folks can see it. We're looking at avenues within the veteran pool, as well as even athletes that are transitioning from, call it the NFL or so forth. They've got specific characteristics that would do well in the space. So I think those are the charges. I want to add something to what Greg said. I believe that, albeit that the individuals in this book were very centered in Greg's life, obviously why most are right there in that DMV area, and that they had a huge impact and influence on his career. But I also want to say that the pearls in this book, once I had a chance to read it a couple of times, just with everybody and what they're offering and speaking to, it's agnostic. It could help anyone that's facing various, challenges, adversity, or even successes as they navigate through their careers to even propel it to a higher level.
Yeah, I agree with you 1,000%. One of the things I think that's a hidden advantage in reading a book like this is getting a different perspective. And sales is one of those things where you have to be creative. You have to come up with new ideas. You have to have new perspectives that you're learning and appreciating. And these folks were such pioneers. They were doing things that no one that looked like they had to look at things a different way. It was just in their makeup because they didn't come from the traditional hiring pool. That's why I think this book has value for such a wide audience, is because everybody needs that, especially people that may have come from a traditional hiring pool. They can really benefit from seeing it from an outsider's perspective. What's the meaning behind the title, The Pivot Point, Greg?
All right. The pivot point, that's a critical moment in someone's life when they make a singular decision that's going to affect their trajectory of their career for the rest of their lives. And it's interesting because I toyed with another title that I stuck with up until probably a year before we launched the book, and that was called The Accidental Salesman, because I felt that all of us accidentally pivoted into this space. You can attest to this as well. I challenge anyone that 95% of the people who are currently in medical device sales all pivoted into this business, whether they're black, white, green, or yellow. We did not know about this in college or when we first started our career. And so that's why I then changed it to the pivot point. But there's also a couple of other reasons. You asked a question about how I did the book. I did it backwards. I didn't do my research to define a good title. I just liked the title and was going with it, and come to find out there are tons of accidental books that are out there. So God works in mysterious ways, and this pivot point is capturing exactly everything that's going on with all the members that we highlighted in the book.
That's fantastic. For those that don't know you yet, Greg, what was your personal pivot point? What was your biggest one in your career?
So I kind of alluded to it. I have to tell you a funny story. I'm not going to give you all the secret
Well, we
sauce
can't do the
because I
whole
want
book
you to
on the
get the book
podcast.
because I tell it all. But it was funny because I was a captain and I had a hell of a career. I do mean that. I had 2 commands. I was finishing up a brigade 2 job, and they said, "Greg, we want to send you to Germany for 3 years." Unfortunately, I was divorced and I had a kid who was 5, and I had to weigh, do I leave for 3 years, which would have been 4 or 5 in the military, if you understand how it works, coming back to a kid who really didn't know his dad? So I decided to make that pivot. And the phone call that I received from a headhunter was hilarious. He goes, "Greg, I have an interview for you with the Johnson and Johnson company." I'm like, "Selling baby powder? I don't want to sell no baby powder." Ignorant, number one. Number 2, he says, "No, man, you're going to be with the company selling suture. It's called Ethicon." I'm like, "What's a suture? I don't want to sell no suture." Then he told me I was going to be making $97,000 a year. Back then, I'm like, "I'll take it." So that was my pivot point, and it was a true blessing because 25, 30 years later, it has opened doors that I would never have seen.
Yeah, that's great. Dave, what was your pivot point?
Mine was similar from the transition from the military, but the reasoning was a little different. I was a little, in terms of time frame, year group. I was before Greg, and let's say it's the mid '80s. Not to date myself too much, but I had just finished a command, or I was in the midst of a command position, trying to look at what was next in my military career at that 6-7 year mark. And I'm just looking out, and there are no wars, there was no conflicts. It was actually a time in the military where they were actually downsizing, and even bonusing people to leave. So it kind of laid the writing on the wall as to where is this going. And if you don't have pardon the expression, if you don't have a lot of, call it, employees, for the lack of a better word, even though this is soldiers, you don't need as many chiefs. You understand what I'm saying? So at this point, I'm probably overanalyzing whatever. I'm trying to look forward, be strategic. I got a family, I got a child, I got to provide. So I began to be more open to looking at where my station in life at that particular point in time was, what value I brought to corporate America. I sought some insight with mentors. That drove my pivot. So I actually communicated with a company called Cameron Brooks, who specialized in junior military officers and preparing them to transition, their skill set, their training and experience from the military over into corporate America. It was really a 9-month process. So that became my pivot, but even deeper when I got into it, because now, as Greg pointed out, I'm learning about opportunities that are out there that I never knew existed. And I'm trying to understand what was drawing me, what was my passion, where I felt my right fit was. And at that moment, J&J Ethicon excited me. I wanted to get into sales there. They were a dynamic leader, were known for their training program and preparing people. The Credo, the J&J Credo was a great fit. Unfortunately, I didn't get the sales role when I interviewed initially, but I did get a role with operations. The next pivot for me was to say, okay, this is where I prefer to be, but I didn't get the shot. I'm going inside. I'm going to build my knowledge base, become subject matter expert, do what I need to do to facilitate and navigate into that space. And that's how I found it on my end. So that was a kind of a double pivot.
Yeah.
It worked out.
That's great. Yeah, it definitely worked out. Yeah, Greg, take us inside your process as an author. You're obviously a business guy and a sales leader and all of that, but I assume writing a book was new for you. A lot of people feel like they've got a book inside of
Oh,
themselves. So how did you get this one out?
great question. First time ever writing a book, had no clue what to do to write a book. Fortunately, I have a circle of friends I have to give shout out, please. Allison Ward, Kevin Dixon, and Markeisha Wilson. They both have, all three of them have written several books, and they were phenomenal mentors and coaches, guiding me along the way. And each step, Jordan, was an adventure. For example, I interviewed all 16 people, videotaped them. That took a year and a couple of months to catch everybody. Then I had it transcribed. I used Fiverr. Fiverr is a wonderful resource. Again, there are resources now that I've completed a book. I could probably have this book done in a year versus 3 years. But it was a phenomenal process. And as you mentioned, I'm one of those sales guys. I love to be challenged. I love to learn. And it was a wonderful learning experience to the point I'm ready for book 2 and book 3.
Yeah.
It's like a bug. You get bitten. And the thing that has amazed me the most, and I was telling Dino this last week, the number of people who have expressed interest in writing a book has been overwhelming. At first, I was taking it personally, or I was a little too sensitive. But I realized there are a lot of people who write a book who just have not applied the time and or effort to do it. But I hope they do. And I'm here publicly to help you if that's something you choose to do.
Yeah. I'm surprised more don't. I know it takes a lot out of people to do it and people are busy, but when we think about legacy, I mean, you have a legacy now. I mean, you had one before, but this one outlives you, right? Because this is something that you're going to have that people are going to use and they're going to reference. And so I encourage our folks in our audience to really think about it because there's so much in here, so many skills, so many coaching, so much coaching. It's great. Why, I want to go back to something we talked about earlier. Why do so many people not have any idea that the medical device industry even exists? They don't know. Our reps that we know, they help so many people out there every single day.
Well, let's break it down in layman's term. First of all, our business is a business to business industry. Think about it.
True.
I'll give you an example or a story. When I had my total hip done last year, a year and a half ago, I went in and I told the orthopedic surgeon I wanted you to use DePuy hip. I wanted you to use the Vicryl suture. I wanted you to use monocryl, and then I want you to use Dermabond. He said to me, in my 25 years, I've never had a patient tell me what to use. You must be in medical device sales. Correct, I was. And he did exactly that, and my hip looks fabulous.
Company man.
But when you talk
Company
about
man right there. Okay.
but the average person wouldn't know that. I mean, we don't hear about those products on TV. And if you're not a doctor or a nurse or in that medical field, you wouldn't know about our industry. So again, lack of awareness, and why what you're doing and helping us is so huge. Because with this de-emphasis going on, I'm not trying to get political, I promise you, of DEI, I think it's going to be even harder for at-risk or underserved populations to know about what we do. And I think that's a huge miss in this industry. We all have to be represented, particularly when you go to cities like Chicago, Atlanta, DC, Houston, and your clientele are of all ethnicities. They want to see a mix of people. So if we could just help bridge that gap of lack of awareness with this book and with your efforts of podcasting, I think it'll make a big difference.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I agree. I think also when we look at healthcare disparities and lack of representation of individuals who are from the community and understand unique needs and potential oversights that can happen in that community, if there isn't someone there that knows it and has insight into it and says, hey, we also need to look at this or consider this, things can get missed. And I know NSN and Excel at one point, they were really looking at healthcare disparities, I think also. Am I right about that, Dave? Does memory serve?
Yeah, they were looking at some of the healthcare disparities, and that was kind of the charge, going back to what Greg was saying, and just to expand on a little bit based on what you just laid out. My involvement with, whether it was J&J and later with Medtronic, as you well know, it was important that they participated in conferences or other avenues to, one, educate who they were, and then two, to help them find, the optimum candidates. So you're engaging with all kinds of folks who had no clue about the space. One, they don't know where to go to, and that's one of the beauties of this book. It's going to hopefully get in as many hands as possible to introduce them to that space, and each one teach one gets the opportunity out there. But I think it's in part one where one goes, gets the information, where they seek the candidates, and then us on our end continuing to educate and spread the religion in terms of the opportunities, the impact, the societal impacts that they can make in a very purpose-driven space.
Yeah.
Could I make one more comment here, Jordan? I would be remiss if I did not talk about the higher academic institutions that are out there. Right. Think about it. How many schools, universities have degrees in sales?
Very few.
Not many. Not many. Yeah, as I was doing my research, there were a couple that had certificates. There were a couple from maybe an MBA program that focused on it. But for the most part, these higher eds have traditional degrees, and they have not changed in over 30, 40, 50 years. I challenge them to look at this book as a resource that can help open eyes, not just about sales, the medical industry as a whole. Because if you're getting a degree in operations like Dave did, or you're getting a degree in finance, marketing, engineering, bioscience, these medical device companies are also hiring those types of people too, not just sales people. And I think that if these schools would start looking at that, it would open up a wider range of opportunities for individuals trying to seek various types of job opportunities. And the other thing I want to do is I want to send a shout out. I got to send a shout out to NSN, Dino. Did I mention that yet?
No, we haven't really dug deep into that. I mean,
yeah, they're having their national sales meeting in DC, and it's going to be, I have notes here, next year at the Marriott Marquis, and I believe the dates are like the 14th, 12th through the 14th in Washington, D.C.
Of what,
and,
August or September?
It's going to be August. Amir sent me the information, and I think here it is, the 12th through the 14th is going to be their NSN national meeting in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And why is that important? You know, they have been pioneers for decades helping African Americans just get into all kinds of businesses, whether it's pharmaceutical, B2B, you name it. And they're so instrumental in carrying that torch and carrying that baton. I would be remiss if I did not give them a shout out for this.
Great order.
Both David Richardson and his daughter, Amira Richardson, for what they do.
Great.
Yeah, and I'll add, I think the organization, Jordan, just to do another plug, because I've been a member with NSN since '96. They do a nice job of the personal and professional development one needs to be successful in whatever field they chose to engage in.
You know, it's not a long-term committed one like I went through with the Cameron Brooks of 9 months getting ready to transition from one field to the next, but they do a nice job, not only just to get the opportunity, but to grow within it once they're out there. And much like what you're doing with these podcasts that I've listened to, my gosh,
Yeah, they're all
There's a number of it's got me all pumped up, ready to put the suit back on and get back out there, put the
Let's
scrubs on
go.
again. So no, it's true. You know, when you learn all of these things now, you're like, dang, if I could do this all over again.
all over again. Correct.
You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of how I've looked at this project as well. It's informing, and my goodness, man, you got 16 mentors sitting out there waiting to talk to you if you reach out to them.
Yeah, great points, all. I want to talk about the book a little bit. You tell the
Yep.
story of 16 African American medical sales trailblazers. Many of them were the first, not just in their company, but the first person representing their a medical device product or pharmaceutical product in their city. How did you select them? How did you find these? I mean, these are folks you knew personally.
All right. This is my time to tell everybody, for those that I did not put in the book, it was not personal. You would be amazed at how come I'm not in the book, Greg. I mean, everybody. And that was probably, to your previous question, the hardest thing to figure out is how I wanted to capture and what I wanted to write about, because there were so many different angles I could have gone with this book. The first version, Jordan, was like 623 pages. No one's going to read no 623-page book. So I then had to, with the coaching of my mentors that I mentioned earlier, was figure out a theme. And I wanted to talk about the managers that I managed. That was a huge void that I felt was a miss for folks from transitioning from a rep to manager. But someone said, why don't you just talk about those people that were influential in your career, in your start? And the lights went off for me. And those were the 16 that I did. You know, there were 2 individuals I asked, 2 more. I wanted about 18 or 20, hoping that I would get 10. Every single person said yes, with the exception of 2. So I couldn't go back and tell the other 6, no, you can't be in the book. So I had to make it work. No one knows that. I never told you that, Dino, by the way.
Well, it definitely worked. So there were other stories you wanted to tell. Couldn't fit them all in one book, but there's some other books coming. So that sounds good. I'm looking forward to that.
That was the teaser for you. That's the teaser for you, Jordan.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about some. The tough thing to do on a podcast is not to talk about the entire book. You want people to go out and buy it. But there are some quotes that I just, as a recruiter, that I wanted to throw out to you guys that were in the book and get your reaction, because I'm just reading it. I'm like, this one I really resonated with me, that I just really wanted my audience to hear it. And I'm going to read it verbatim, and then let's talk about it. Understand that your job is not just your job. It's theirs. Always be aware of the broader landscape and consider lateral moves that might open doors to new opportunities. As a recruiter, I mean, that's just, that one, that might be my favorite quote in the whole book. But I love the fact that it's so true. It's not just your job. I would argue it's not even your job. It is the company's job all the time. They have that job and they can take it away. But anyway, that was my first thought that went through my head. That was, I think, your dad, Dave. I think that's a quote from him. Am I right about that?
That talked about, if I am understanding what you're speaking to, was the level of what we call business loyalty.
Yeah, exactly.
What you got to understand, for those that haven't had a chance to read the book, he was one of the first of 2 in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area to embark on medical sales. He was in the pharmaceutical sector. Pfizer had saw a change in the demographics, and I'll just explain this quickly. And that's when they saw the change in the physician demographics in the DC environment. That's when they decided to do this experiment. And in 1967, the opportunity came to my dad. He was working in the government at that particular point in time, and jumped on it and was prepared for it in terms of what he had done to lead up to that point, to speak to the skill sets they were looking for. And he got the opportunity. And what he meant by that when he shared it with us as we were growing and getting into the space was that, when you have a business transaction, it can be very superficial. and for that moment and for that singularity. Even if it's a 3-year agreement or some sort, it's singular in moment. When it's over, it's over. But what he focused on was developing what he thought were enduring, value-based relationships with his customers. He felt that if it was rooted in trust and mutual respect, that would endure, call it those small business transactions, the guy who came with the bigger number or the bigger dollars or this, that, or the other. And you had the right product and service that they were offering that helped them achieve, in this medical space, call it the outcomes that they were after. So that was what he meant by that. And it was something that I know I internalized in my career, was to build those relationships. You know, as a matter of fact, quick story, one of his mentees that he bought, that came to the company, that he just put his arms around him and had grown to be a VP and beyond, and just recently retired from, his name is Julius Dixon, from Boehringer Ingelheim. He was at Novartis and I think AstraZeneca as well. I may be mistaken on one of the companies. But one of the things he said that he took away from my pop was, not everybody can help you, but anybody can hurt you. So he made a point, from the guy at the door to the janitor near the elevator to all the way up to the CEO. He made a point to build those relationships, because you know how much information you can get by the guys coming that are right there at the door, seeing who's coming in and when and how much.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a funny story,
Yep.
but he applied it and he shared it with everybody else.
Yeah.
So that's what he meant by those enduring relationships that were long lasting and would work through change in time.
Yeah. That's great.
That was another challenge for the book. Not being redundant with all the wisdom and knowledge that everyone was trying to share. But that point that Big Dave said resonated with me as well, because I think when you're young or you're new starting in a business, you do not understand that the companies themselves can pivot, and then they can affect you. And I want young people to understand, by reading these 16 stories, that, whoa, all right, let me have a plan A and a plan B, just in case that company pivot does happen, because it will. And also, there's a aging out program or process that happens. I mean, you start young, maybe 20, 30 years, guess what? You're going to age out. They're going to backfill you with someone else. Be prepared to understand that from a psychological perspective. It's going to happen. So get your head wrapped around it so you're prepared for it. That's what those stories share and show you. My son's 37. He's been in the business now 10 years. And he's at that point like, whoa, I need to start thinking about what's the plan B going to be.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it came up a couple times in the book, which is something else I appreciated, is multiple income streams. I mean, just things like that even today people are not necessarily thinking about. But there was a female rep who is, I think, in Minneapolis that you mentioned. I keep
Erling
Yes, and she realized that a lot of companies end up cutting commissions for their top reps. They figure out ways to do it, and so she started plowing a lot of her earnings into real estate to create another income stream. And I thought, that is not common knowledge as people think. I deal with people in job transition all the time who are caught flat-footed and haven't developed multiple income streams. So it's just little nuggets like that that also stand out to me. And there was another person in the book that was talking about that as well.
Yes, if I could chime in.
Yeah,
real
go ahead.
quick. There were 4 people that I captured in the book that were way smarter than me. I think there's a curse and a blessing being a military person, because you're trained to do the mission, do one thing, be loyal. But these folks were loyal to the company they were with, but they were also working on their plan B. And to the point now, they have all retired. That plan B is probably making more money than their plan A did. And I sit back and say, wow, Greg, you missed that memo. So that's why I spend a lot of time kind of focusing on that, because I want young folks to understand, what is your plan B? What is your plan C? And those stories are vibrant, and and they're doing very, very well because
And
of
you
it.
know, and I think because they were under such scrutiny, it being the first,
Mhm.
that you knew you had to develop a plan B. You're under a lot of scrutiny if you're pioneering something. That makes you say, hey, if I'm not around here for a long time, but just for a good time, how am I going to make this thing pay off long term? And I think that is such valuable thinking. That stood out to me. Dave, what's the Mayo Stand?
The Mayo Stand. The Mayo Stand for me was a good telltale sign of where I stood or where my company that I represented stood. When you walked in, it's this silver table or a larger table on the side of the bed, and we had the fortune, if you were doing your job correctly, of earning the opportunity to have access into the operating room to stand alongside the surgeon in that sterile area to be able to offer consultative input as they're doing their job and going after the outcomes that they were trying to achieve. But when you walked in, I mean, I had immediate communication as to the status of the business. The Mayo Stand represented the physician's preference and the preference of the staff and what it would take to achieve the desired outcomes of the case, whatever that case may be, whatever specialty that is. Everything is laid out, prepared, and ready to open for them to complete the case that this physician has thought out. So when I walked in, if whether in partiality or no presence at all, then I knew I had some work to do because I believe my products were the best,
But they might not be
and
on.
that's why I was there representing them.
But they might not be on
What'd
the
you say?
Mayo Stand. Is that right? And if they're not, then you know.
That's right. If they weren't on the Mayo Stand, they needed to find access to the Mayo Stand. And that's where you start to qualify and understand and have that work that's been done already, the preparation part of it. One, understanding your product, understanding the competitors' products as well that they're utilizing, understanding the procedure, basically becoming subject matter expert at what you're doing so that you're truly being consultative, truly being authentic in your presentation, such that they could take your advice. And obviously, you want to work toward them evaluating that same product in that same environment so that it can earn that space of knocking off that other product in their setup to your product. So the next time you walk into that operating room, you see a full Mayo Stand of the brand you represent. So that's what it was for me. I called it my stage or my battlefield because it really inspired me to understand exactly where I stood. It was immediate feedback. And that's pretty much how I drove what I did. Quick, funny story. First day on the job, go to my number one account, walk in, gain access to build a rapport to a surgeon. I look at the Mayo Stand. There was nothing on there from my company.
Yeah.
Little did I know that I learned that day was that they had just changed their contract 1st of January, and I'd started maybe the second week of January. So it immediately let me know that there was work to be done, and we ultimately converted that, just to say.
As a manager, I would ride with my reps and I would tell them, I said, the test of success is if your product is on the Mayo Stand.
Yeah.
And I remember one of my reps, she felt that getting to know the staff was not all that important. And, we talked earlier about the importance of relationships. I think Big Dave harped on that in the book quite a bit. So we go into the account and she says, I just talked to the doctor. And I'm like, oh, let's see how this is going to go. Sure enough, we get in, doctor's like, what are we using today? Staff said, oh, we picked this product. And it was just egg on her face. It was complete failure, because it's a complete staff sale. And that is the true barometer check. If your medical device sales, is your stuff on that Mayo Stand?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love writing that part for Dave. That was fun.
Yeah, there's so many stories in there, and just nuggets of wisdom, just things that you really do need to read the book more than once. Dave, you said you read it a couple times.
Absolutely.
I would read a couple chapters and then I'd read them over again, and I'd say, oh, there's something else in there that I missed. Do you have to be the most intelligent person in the room, Dave, to be in there?
No, I don't think so at
Yeah.
all. I've seen individuals that were smartest cats, super intelligent, knew their product, inside and out, clinical data, disease states, the whole bit. But they lacked other skill sets that I thought were important. I'm a big Daniel Goleman guy on the emotional intelligence. And if you're not able to build that rapport, build that trust, have the communication, the social skill sets to engage people, to be present, and to be able to receive your message, it's all for naught. You won't get anywhere, and you'll just become extremely frustrated. Probably won't be around very long because you'd have to choose something else. So, yeah. So you don't have to be the smartest. Do you have to be prepared? Do you need to be the subject matter expert in your space? Absolutely. But you have to have people who are ready to receive your message. And that's where those other skills come into play to differentiate you from the next guy.
I have to surmise Kevin Jackson. He
Yeah.
says you have to be legit.
Mhm.
You have to be legit. Kevin's in the book. Frank Wright, you have to be on
Yeah.
point. I mean, I think they articulate it better than anybody in the book. You have to be legit.
We were driving somewhere last night, my wife and I began to talk to her about door knock theory, and she got really, really excited and just immediately grasped the concept. But I would love to have you, Greg, just share a little bit about door knock theory. This is another major thing that resonated with me in my life, and how the way I came up, and my wife too. Tell us about door knock theory.
Joe Press, iconic. He's a GOAT. 33 years with Ethicon Endosurgery in the DMV as a manager rep. This is what he learned prior to pivoting into J&J, into medical device sales. He was selling newspapers. His story is deep, but he's selling newspapers. He realized that in order to be successful, I need to knock on hundreds and hundreds of doors, i.e. have high volume, have persistence. That's going to equate to results.
Oh, wow.
And the other thing is that he learned is no means maybe not yet. You get desensitized to no, but in sales, you're going to get told no all the time. You have to figure out how to work around it. So you mentioned earlier about reading it several times. The foreword for the book is Roger Cameron, who was one of the founder, he and his wife, Renee Brooks, of Cameron Brooks. And he said this book should have been written 50 years ago. When Dino and I went to meet him earlier this year before we launched the book, he had the manuscript and he had notes on every single page. He says, Greg, I've read this thing at least 4 times. And he was flipping through, asking us questions. He goes, this is a workbook. You can't just read it one time and put it down. That was a true testament to me that, okay, it's achieving what I wanted to achieve. And the other validation was my goddaughter. She is a senior at Hampton. And this door knocking theory, like it resonated with your wife, it resonated with her.
Yeah.
She's 21 years old. She's never been rejected or told no. Her dean told her no. She was devastated. I gave her the book as a project because I knew we were going to be talking to colleges and universities. And I wanted to make sure, I'm a little older. I'm not 19 or 20. I just want to make sure I could relate to the 19, 20-year-olds. And she says, Uncle Greg, I read this chapter 3 times because I realized that I have to go back and see that dean because I was just going to walk away. She went back to see the dean, and guess what happened? It was a mistake of misidentity. The dean thought she was someone else who walked out of one of her classes, and it wasn't. And she learned from that moment, thus reading the book, to say you're going to have that door knocker mentality if you're going to be successful or succeed in life.
Yeah, it's something that I want my son and daughter to read multiple times. They just have to. I think that is such a valuable lesson for everyone, but particularly young people that are just getting started. And I think if I remember the story right, he was at an HBCU and everybody there seemed to have their act totally together. Morehouse. So, these folks are, they're well put together. They've got their life figured out, or appear that's the case. But he didn't have his life figured out. He didn't know what he was going to do. He was like, when I graduate, I'm not going to have a job. I don't know, and he saw a flyer on the wall that said you can sell newspaper subscriptions, which no one at that college was interested in doing. And look at him today.
But it resonated with him, though.
It
you know?
did.
That was his pivot point. That was his pivot point.
And for the audience, this book is filled with stories like this. I don't want to go through the whole book on the podcast. I want you to go out and buy the book, because these are some of the most unique stories you're going to read, invaluable information. And Greg and Dave, I can't thank you enough for being on the podcast today. Just absolutely fantastic.
Well,
Hold up the book one more time, if you would.
got it.
And where can people find your book, Greg?
You can go to Amazon.com and just type in The Pivot Point, breaking into medical device sales. It pops up. We also have an official site. It's www.thepivotpoint.vip, Victor India Papa.vip.
Right.
And I hope folks enjoy the book. And again, we're all 16 of us are open books as well. Again, I'm up to about 25 folks that have reached out, and I will do that because that is my passion, is to help those get into this space.
Thanks for listening to the Chase MedSearch podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Be sure to visit our website at chasemedsearch.com and drop a resume. That way you never miss a job opportunity. And please subscribe to our YouTube platform, even if you like to consume the content in other ways. It really helps our algorithm, and we'd love to see you.